Good evening, everyone. My name is Brock McMillan. I call this meeting to order at 6:06 on August 29th. Sorry for the late start. We've had some technical difficulties. I'd like to welcome all the guests that we have in the audience. And this meeting is being held in person at the Springville office, and it is being streamed online live on YouTube. It's a public forum allowing everyone to express their opinions and proposals on the management of wildlife and fisheries in our state. And this RAC considers your ideas, opinions, and proposals and reports them to the Wildlife Board. The Wildlife Board, not the RAC, is charged with setting wildlife policy. We all have opinions. We all are emotional and passionate. We're all going to be respectful. There's a bunch of stuff here saying to read how you're going to be respectful, but I expect we'll all be respectful. So I'd like to start by thanking those that are rotating off of this committee, or that have rotated off this committee since our last meeting. And those include Ben Louder, Ken Strong, who's here tonight to make comments, I guess, AJ Maurer and Danny Potts. And I wanted to express my sincere gratitude to all of those individuals. All of those individuals came to meetings prepared and came to all the meetings and were very beneficial to the RAC. I'll go around the room now and let those individuals introduce themselves that are here for the RAC. If you're new, Kellen, tell us a little bit about yourself, who you represent, but a little bit about yourself as well. So let's start with Eric.
Eric Reed, represent BLM.
Mike Christensen, represent At Large.
I'm Kellen Heyer. I represent agriculture. Obviously, I'm new to the RAC. I've been to some RAC meetings before, but I was a little tight back when they were held at the junior high school. My family has a family cattle ranch here in the state of Utah. We have some summer range up in Wyoming. We run on public lands down in Juab County. So I'm excited to get involved and to learn more.
Thank you, Kellen. And I believe Josh is online.
Yep, I got you, Brock. Russell Leonard, Sportsman's Rep.
Thank you very much. I'd also like to welcome the DWR staff, specifically those that have provided presentations. We have Randy Oplinger here with us, the cold water Sportfish coordinator. I'd also like to welcome the public who are attending in person, who are watching on YouTube. Those in person will have the opportunity to ask questions or comment on any of the things we're considering tonight. If you would like to make a comment, you need to fill out one of these cards and just pass it up here and we will get it. The cards are out on the table right outside the door. We only have one of those right now, so please fill those out. When you have a chance to comment, if you're representing an organization or a group, you'll have up to 5 minutes. If you're representing yourself, you'll have up to 3 minutes. With that, I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda and pass minutes.
So moved.
We don't have a quorum right now. We're hoping 2 more will join us, so votes are kind of meaningless right now, but we'll do it anyway. We have a motion.
Second.
And we have a second. All those in favor? Josh? Okay, excellent. I guess it's my turn to give a brief update from the Wildlife Board meetings. There have been 3 board meetings since the last time we met. 2 board meetings and a work session. At the first board meeting, there was a motion to approve the wild turkey plan and recommendations as presented. That passed unanimously. There was a motion to accept the upland game recommendations as presented. That passed unanimously. There was a motion to approve the amended recommendation making the take of trumpeter swan legal, but the possession limit illegal. That motion did not get a second. there was a motion that if the quota reaches 10 chumpler swans taken on public shooting grounds, then the public shooting grounds and barrier of refuge would close. That motion also did not pass for lack of a second. There was a motion to approve the division's original recommendation as presented, and that motion passed unanimously. There was a motion to accept the live game bird rule amendment as presented. That passed unanimously. There was a motion to approve the collection, importation, and possession rule amendments as presented, and that passed unanimously. And then CWMU variance request, there was a motion to deny the CWMU variance request until after the committee makes a recommendation and it goes through the process. That motion passed with a tie vote and Chairman Albrecht breaking that vote. And then there was a motion to approve the translocation management plan for desert tortoises as presented, and that motion passed unanimously. That was the first board meeting. The second board meeting, August 17th, there was a motion to accept the expo permit audit as presented, and that passed unanimously with Paul Richmond recusing to vote. Then there was a motion to approve the expo permit allocation, and that similarly passed unanimously with one recusing from the vote. And then on August 24th, there was a wildlife board work session. And in that work session, you can get online and watch the presentations. There was a presentation on an update on the elk status in the state with Dax Mangus giving that update. And then there was an elk management data and metrics presentation by Mike Wardle. And then there was collaborative elk research. And then there was an elk conflict management. This is similar to the work session that was held last year for deer, but this work session was focused on elk in the state. Then there was a presentation on the draw system and over-the-counter cells by Lindy, elk habitat update by Danny Summers, and then there was a mule deer mid-year update presented by Randy Larson. Any questions about the board meetings?
Who's the other, Paul Richmond's the new wildlife board member, who's the other one?
He's from the Southeast region. Ken Johnson, that's right, very good, thank you, Kellen. So he was, I believe, the chair of the Southeast RAC, and so I think they're two pretty good additions, great additions, so not pretty good, great additions to the wildlife board. Okay, I will turn the time over to Jason for a regional update.
All right, thanks, Brock. I appreciate that. And I want to echo your comments on those RAC members that went off the RAC at our last meeting. I appreciate their time and their efforts. Maybe before I get started, I see Ken is here in the audience, and typically we give a gift to the outgoing RAC members. I didn't have the gift here last time that we were here, but it has since arrived here. So I just want to take a minute and present him with that gift. And Ken, if you wouldn't mind.
Oh. That's awesome.
This is typically with our outgoing RAC members, we give them a credit for Clark Bronson. We kind of, I think, adopted him internally as one of our wildlife artists. He's done a lot of great work. Thank you for taking that picture.
Don't make your face so.
I got one where most of his face did.
I want to see you.
You can probably let go. You can let go of the top. Jason's got it. I love that picture.
Ken shows a trout going after a fly, but you know, they spend a lot of time and a lot of effort into this. This is not near enough compensation for anything that you've done throughout the years, 8 years on the RAC. So thank you for your time and your efforts, and we'll miss you, and we know you'll be here occasionally for a especially for the aquatics.
Yeah, well, somebody's gotta straighten you guys out.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So thank you.
So with that, we'll go ahead and dive into our regional update. If you'll go ahead and advance that, Mike.
Bryce is on his way, so we will have a quorum. If Ziegler gets here.
We're good to go. Okay, sorry, I didn't see it up here. So, all right, so our aquatic section, an update from our aquatic section. Chris Crockett, our aquatics manager, is here today, and he mentioned Utah Lake, a couple things going on out there. He said the tip of the day is fishing for white bass and catfish is great right now. So if you're out wanting to do some fishing locally here, Utah Lake's a great place to go. Also, we have our June Sucker program out of the region here. Our crew just finished a cooperative project with USU using large seines to monitor the fish populations throughout the lake. In our natives program, we have boreal toad and native mollusk surveys taking place throughout the region. And then our crew's been really busy this last couple of weeks doing stream surveys throughout the region. Got Big Cottonwood, Little Cottonwood, Mill Creek, canyons that they've been doing some work in. Additionally, they've been spending quite a bit of time out in our Northeast region, up in the Uintas, helping prepare for some restoration projects up in the Uintas. So they've been really busy and appreciate the work they're doing out there. Next is our wildlife section. A lot of work going on there. Our crews have been really busy this year with the late winter that we had and the deeper snows that we had. It really restricted the amount of time that we were able to get out in the field. So all of our summer seasons have been compacted down into a really short period. Our wildlife section just finished up the preseason elk and pronghorn classifications throughout the region. Those are our biologists and staff driving throughout the canyons and the roads and counting elk and pronghorn. Just recently, they also completed the mountain goat surveys on the Nebo and the Wasatch. They're also in the process of preparing new mule deer unit plans. The range strand crew that collects data on the range, the habitat came through last year, and now the mule deer unit plans can be designed around some of that data from the habitat crews. And then something that's just year-round, sometimes higher than others, are our nuisance, our depredation. Those teams have been busy removing some deer here and there out of some ag fields, but also we've had some bears and recently a moose wandering along the highway, along I-80. And as our population continues to grow, we're gonna probably continue to see some of these challenges across the Wasatch Front, especially of wildlife interacting with the population and getting into some pretty hard spots. I would say our wildlife crews work really hard and they have a lot of experience dealing in these urban areas and trying to figure out how to manage these wildlife. In our habitat section, quite a bit of habitat work going on. And I'm gonna hit a couple different mountains as we talk about this. On the Manti LaSalle, down above Manti and Ephraim, doing a lot of work up in the high elevation. They completed 400 acres of aspen regeneration work in June, and they're starting 700 more acres this week in 12 Mile Canyon. We have thousands of acres cleared down there through the NEPA and the archaeological process. And we look forward to keep working on that mountain down there for wildlife. Parley's Canyon, we've completed approximately 1,000 acres of mule deer summer range improvement projects. As you drive up Parley's Canyon and look off to your right or to the south, you can see some of those projects where we've had masticators go in and remove some of the trees in that area. Stansbury Mountains, we've completed about 1,000 acres of juniper mastication to improve mule deer and bighorn sheep habitat. And we've got another 2,000 acres that we're targeting this fall in the same area. The Vernon units, riparian areas, water, as you know, is extremely important out in those desert systems. We completed a riparian exclosure fence in Little Valley to protect the habitat from mule deer and sage grouse, protect those riparian habitats. And then as I mentioned, and everybody saw with this winter and the deep snows, we have quite a few guzzlers throughout the region. And some of those guzzlers are mid to high elevation and were damaged severely with the snow loads. So our staff's been out spending quite a bit of time trying to get those guzzlers repaired and ready to capture some water this coming fall and winter. All right, Mike, with outreach, thank you. Super busy in outreach. I just put on, let's see, seven clinics or things that are going on in our outreach section that are happening before our next RAC meeting. We have the state fair and the fishing pond. If you haven't been to the state fair, we have a building up there, a wildlife building, and a fishing pond. So go ahead and go up there. It's fun for the kids and a lot of wildlife animals and pictures up there this year. Kokanee Salmon Viewing Day, one of our favorite days, is going to be September 16th at the Strawberry Visitor Center up near Strawberry Reservoir. Along with that, in conjunction with that, we also have a live streaming video. One of our staffs figured out a way to put a camera underwater and stream it live from Strawberry Valley. So we'll have it up for about a week, and you'll be able to see the fish coming up through into the trap and into that area. We have a women's shooting clinic coming up on September 21st. This will be at the Big Hollow Shooting Range up near Heber City and Daniels. Beginning waterfowl hunting seminar on September 27th here in this room at the Central Region office. And the following night, a fall turkey hunting seminar. And then on October 5th, we're planning a deer field dressing clinic, and that'll be here at the regional office as well. So lots and lots of clinics, lots of things going on for everybody, and we hope we can get the public and out to attend those meetings or to those clinics. With that, I don't have anything else unless there's any questions from the RAC.
Do you know what the results were from the mountain goat?
That's my question.
Oh, is it? Sorry.
No, that's fine.
I don't.
Okay.
Let me make a text real quick and see if I can get that information.
I mean, that probably, it doesn't affect, it was just more of a curiosity.
Sure, yeah.
Some of the populations are down. I was just wondering the same thing, if they remain steady or if they've been hurt too.
I'll see what I can do to find out. Any questions I can answer?
That's it. So I guess the next item, we're moving on to item number 5, which is the 2024 fishing recommendations, the first action item on the agenda. I know we have 2 additional RAC members that are supposed to be here any second, which will give us a quorum. And
Paul is doing online, so Paul is online.
oh, yeah. Board member. So, I didn't even do that. I'd like to recognize both Paula Shepard and Gary Nielsen, Paula Richmond and Gary Nielsen, 2 board members that are in attendance at this RAC meeting. We really appreciate both of you coming. Should we wait for the last 2? Or just
Maybe
move
let
on?
him start and see how far we get.
Okay, and Randy, I guess, has some updates to the presentation that he provided. So let's let him go and provide his update, and then we'll open to questions.
Yeah, pretty simple, but yeah, in addition to what we actually proposed for spearfishing regulation changes, as in the presentation that you heard ahead of the RAC meetings, we've got 2 additional kind of fishing related regulation changes that we like to propose. They're real straightforward. It's the addition of 2 new community fishing waters in the state. So it's the pond at Poulter Preserve in West Haven, and the second one is the new community fishing pond in the town of Roosevelt. So we're proposing to add those to the list of community fishing ponds here in the state, in addition to the other spearfishing related recommendations that we've originally proposed.
Well, that was easy. Come on in, Bryce.
Sorry.
That's fine. Have a seat anywhere around the table.
That's just one hang out of there.
Yeah. So, welcome Bryce, and I don't know how to ever say his last name.
Most people just call me Bryce.
So that's what I'm calling you. Maybe, before we ask questions, I'll give Bryce a chance to introduce himself. He's one of our new RAC members.
Hello, my name is Bryce Castanetto. What do you want me to?
Who do you represent?
Public is large. I live in Provo. I've been hunting my entire life, as far as I can recall. Hunting and fishing, outdoors, big part of who I am. I've got 4 sons that all love it as well. My wife, not so much, but she's learning or trying to. Mostly archery, bow hunter, and I love everything to do with that and what that represents. Is that good enough?
Excellent, thank you,
I
Bryce.
know Brock for years, a good friend of mine. He and Randy, a big part of probably my involvement with getting involved with this, as well as several friends that work for the division.
Thank you, Bryce. Whatever from Ziegler yet. Do we have questions for Randy?
Good couple.
Let's go. Okay, Mike?
Yeah, so, in your presentation, you talked about, allowing people to spearfish, I don't want to say hunt, but spearfish, species that don't have a limit on them. How hard is it to distinguish between different species, for a spear fisherman? Because, like, if it's an incidental take with a, rod and reel, then you can release that fish, but with a spear fisherman, it would be a little bit, different story. So like in the one reservoir, you'll target smallmouths, but are largemouths present in that reservoir?
I believe there are some largemouth. To get to your question is really, those guys typically spearfish in some of our clearer waters. I realize we've got some regulation changes for the Utah Lake, which isn't very clear, but typically if they're going in the clearer reservoirs that we've got across the state, they have a very short range that those spears go. So they're really basically on top of the fish when they let them go and spear them. So our understanding is really their species ID rate is virtually 100% because they get good visual target on it.
And are they required to have a certificate of registration to spearfish, or is it just included in their license?
It's included in their license.
So do you foresee this becoming a more popular sport where, if it's deregulated more? That's not necessarily a bad thing, but then there might be an educational component with it to the.
Yeah, what we do is every 5 years, we do an angler survey. And what this angler survey does is it gives us a pulse on basically trends in the state in terms of number of anglers participating in different sports. We don't have a firm understanding on spearfishing. It's a very small percent, like under 1%. I think with these specific changes, I'm not really sure what the impact's going to be. We've allowed spearfishing for a long period of time, so this is really with the regulation change we're proposing, or a small number of years is relative to where it's allowed in the state. But we've got that ability, I guess, at one point with this angler survey to track those changes and understand if we're seeing that increase over time and whether we need to increase basically public education goes on with spearfishing across the state.
Okay. The other question, you bringing up the survey, you stated that you stratified the survey. Could you explain how you did that?
Yeah, so what we normally do is select the email addresses that we send the survey out randomly. But when we select those emails just randomly, we put some consideration into a couple of factors that influences what our email pool looks like. And the two things that we look at are county population size. So we're weighting our sample based on the size of the county, basically. So it results in proportion to the size of the counties in the state. And the other thing we consider is gender makeup among our anglers. So about 15% of our anglers are female. So we're trying to select about 15% of our email addresses that we send this out to be targeted toward females.
Yeah, I've been involved in quite a few surveys, being on committees, and we've never stratified them before to target anyone. So
yeah.
Yeah, I understand your concerns. What we're trying to do is just ensure basically the snapshot of numbers to receive a survey of representative of the public across the state. That's the main intent behind that.
That's all the spearfishing questions I have. I have some other questions for other fish related things that the public brought up, but maybe that's our spearfishing.
I just had a couple written down from the public, but go ahead, just keep going.
I talked to much in these.
No, I like this.
So, we did have an email, asking about, crawfish, cod ends. What's the, are you aware of that now? Cause it was pretty widely sent out.
I am not aware of that announcement.
Okay. Maybe in the future we could try to get that. So, the person, and he emailed, I think all of RACs, and he talked about how it's, pretty cumbersome for somebody to go out and catch crawdads and then have to clean them at the water body and, you know, and a vast amount. I think he said 2,000. I've been involved in cleaning like 100 crawdads, and that's like enough for me. So I can't imagine cleaning 2,000 at the lake. I don't know, you know, what number there is, but what's the purpose of of having that, you know, kill on site? Is it just to not transport them to other water bodies, or?
Yeah, there's really two reasons for it, and I've seen this kind of questioning come up in the past, maybe a year ago, come up, but
Hey, Randy,
yeah,
would you mind getting closer to the mic or?
yeah, it's green, it's on, right?
Yeah, right,
Okay.
yep.
Is that better?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I think the two purposes you hit on, one was the illegal movement of animals in the state. We do have one native prairie fish species that's heavily impacted by other prairie fish, and we want to limit the introduction. So having prairie fish leave the water dead is one step that we can take to help ensure that we're not getting prairie fish moving across the state. The other part of this is that we're concerned about disease being spread going along with those prairie fish. We're trying to limit that by, again, ensuring that prairie fish are dead when they leave the water.
Okay, and one specific thing the man asked is if there was some kind of an educational tool that an angler could use, you know, like a core, like getting online and doing like the shed hunting thing, or, you know, where they could become educated, prove that they've taken that course, and then be able to take it. But it sounds like that's probably not a feasible option for the DWR.
Well, I mean, I don't know if this totally addresses it, but we just revised our collection importation permit or possession rule. And as part of that revision process, one thing that we did is if there is an educational element, there's probably some way within that COR process for people to collect and possess them for later, maybe take those.
Okay. Another question that I was asked by two different people was, why can't they fillet their kokanees at Strawberry, but they can fillet them at all other water bodies?
I think a big part of that is the identification of fish. We've got basically a slot limit going on for the cover trout at Strawberry Reservoir. And one thing we'd like seeing is complete fish at Strawberry, so we know whether those fish are cutthroat, whether they're slot or not. A big part of that's protecting cutthroat reservoir.
And I understand, I think that, you know, the identification, I think the two, as long as they left the skin on it, I don't see, like we have slot limits on other lakes that have kokanees, and they can fillet them there, like Flaming Gorge, for example, I believe. I don't know, I don't know, that's not something I would like, or.
I was gonna say, that was a question I had as well. I don't, seems like it'd be easier if it was similar everywhere.
Yeah, so that was the one concern that was raised to me. In identification of, you know, the skin side, I think that should be, maybe, so you can't fillet any fish at Strawberry.
Yeah, that's correct.
So.
I think broadly, you know, what you're bringing up is something we could look at down the road. I think we're in a movement where we're looking at trying to make our regulations more consistent statewide, and we see these issues pop up from time to time where these irregularities get pointed out. So I think there's some opportunity for us down the road to maybe take a further look at this and work with our law enforcement and see what kind of changes we could make to maybe ease it in some cases, because I understand the interest in having us fillet fish.
Okay, and then the last question that was proposed to me was, does the division have any plans to plant golden trout anymore?
The answer is we would like to plant golden trout. Our challenge is finding a health certified source that doesn't have disease for golden trout. We had a source up until works down the road.
Okay, that's all I had.
Questions from anyone else? Questions from the public? Not comments, just questions. If you have questions for Randy, anybody? Okay, I'll turn it over to Jason to summarize the online comments.
All right, thanks, Brock. Online, we had 5 responses to the question, which best describes your position regarding the proposed changes to the Utah Fishing Guidebook. 3 were strongly agreed with it, 1 was neutral, and 1 somewhat disagreed. So with a weighted average of 4, which is somewhat agreed. A couple of the comments, 2 of the comments specifically revolved around spearfishing and that they were happy that they felt their voices were being heard and the division was making spearfishing a little bit easier and including spearfishermen moving forward. Also recognize that spearfishing was able to help in keeping non-game and invasive species populations down in order to help game fish populations. Another one was talking specifically about pike in Utah Lake and agreed with not allowing spearfishing in the new Provo River Delta, but also believed in accepting the pike as a member of the Utah Lake fishing system and getting rid of the kill order on it, and at least just changing it to a no limit. And that he thought that would be exciting for anglers. And then the final one revolved around kokanee, and there was some concern that they would rather see an earlier closing date for kokanee, like around August versus September. And then they thought there was some issues with overfishing kokanee in some of these water bodies, and that kokanee fishing is becoming more popular and they're getting more targeted and getting caught out more readily, and would like to see a 2 fish limit statewide for guided anglers on kokanee. And that would help with natural recruitment and overall size of mature fish.
Thank you, Jason. I do have a question to follow up. I forgot about that comment. What do the surveys say for the kokanee populations? They remaining constant, increasing, decreasing?
Yeah, in recent years, specifically in Flaming Gorge, we've seen a little bit of a decrease in the population, but I mean, that's coming off of an all-time high, honestly. So the population right now is something like 35% below the 10-year average at that reservoir, but it's also not crazy outlying population. I mean, what we see right now is something we have seen historically. I can't, maybe Chris, you can weigh in on strawberry. That's our other big kokanee fishery in the state. I think its numbers are down a little bit from maybe where it was 4 or 5 years ago, but they're still very solid if you compare them to the long-term trend.
And that's correct, because I've heard complaints about strawberry this year.
Yeah, that's correct. I'll just echo about what Randy said with Flaming Gorge. Our numbers at strawberry are within what we've seen, pretty close to the 10-year average. You know, we had a few banner years, and then we had some really poor water years and some other circumstances that have definitely decreased our numbers. But part of that is the good old days for kokanee were a few years ago, and so we are kind of coming off that really exaggerated high. So we'd be happy to come and give a more formal presentation on that. We're still waiting on some of our latest number on kokanee, and then what we see this fall will definitely influence some of the work that we do over the next few years. Randy can speak more to this, but we're right now working on a kokanee management plan that's evaluating our current populations and also setting some steps to move forward in the future relative to production.
Thank you very much.
Really quick, what's the stocking rate? Are you still stocking as many?
Yeah, Randy might have to check on this one. The past couple of years, both at Strawberry and at Flaming Gorge, we haven't gotten returns that we want coming up the river, so we basically have not been able to collect as many. So that has been impacting the number we can stock. I forget what our percentage was this year, but we did not meet our quota for stocking at Flaming Gorge or Strawberry this year.
That's what I thought I heard. So I think it's really important that
that we say those kind of things so the public can know, hey, maybe kokanee are down, not just because of bad water years in that way, but because of bad water years and how it affected our ability to, you know, catch fry and turn loose.
Right, that's a good point. We talked about making some of this information a little more widely known, so anglers understand some of the obstacles, but also understand when we stock 70% of our quota, that there's a good chance in 3 years that fishing may not be as good that year, so they can understand some of these ups and downs.
So there's no adaptive management like we do with big game where we adjust creel limit or limits when we know there's gonna be a down year.
These are some of the questions we're actually tackling right now with our management team that we're working through. So not to dodge the question, but we are asking ourselves some of these issues. Just a reminder on the kokanee, I mean, we do want anglers to harvest a large number of these fish. This is not a fish that you can leave in there for 8 years and it's gonna get bigger and bigger. You stock them and 3 years later, they're gonna die after they spawn. So it is always a balancing act between harvest and natural recruitment.
Very good. Bryce?
I do have a quick question. I was just curious, are there plans to expand to additional bodies of water throughout the state with the kokanee specifically? Because I've seen, you know, electric lake, I'm just curious to know, are we experiencing the same levels of decreased fish there as well? I'm sorry, this is probably for you, Randy.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing that relatively statewide. I think a large part of it's drought has heavily impacted our kokanee population statewide. To get at your question though about expanding our kokanee program, that kind of ties into the management plan that Chris was talking about, where what we're really taking a look at is statewide what our true kokanee needs are within the state. A lot of that is balancing the interests of our anglers with basically the number of kokanee we can provide and try to kind of weigh out what that ideal number of kokanee populations is here across the state. So we're still in the process of writing that plan and, you know, kind of flushing out what those numbers would look like. One limiting factor we've got with our kokanee program is quite frankly hatchery space to raise these fish. So that kind of dives into this plan as well as, you know, how we're going to manage our hatcheries if there really is a need for additional kokanee, how we're going to make that space in our hatchery program. So there's a lot of things we're wrestling. I mean, we know kokanee are a popular species here in the state, but we're trying to assess what that real need is for kokanee fisheries and try to set ourselves up a little bit better so we can adaptively manage the species and try to meet the needs of our anglers moving forward.
Thank you, Randy. Any?
I need to take a 2-minute break. We're having some tech issues again.
Okay, we're gonna take a 2-minute break. We have technical issues again. Hopefully it's only 2 minutes. If you're online, we'll be back in a couple minutes.
So you can be here, we're good to go.
Can Salt Lake hear me?
Yes, Salt Lake can hear you.
So are we good to resume?
You are good.
Okay, we're back into our meeting now. We've had one more RAC member join us, which is excellent, which gives us a quorum, and I'll let him introduce himself and tell a little bit about himself because he's a new member to our RAC.
Hey everyone, I'm John Ziegler, and apologies for a late arrival. Hit some traffic issues coming down. Nice 2.5-hour drive from Park City. But I'm a non-consumptive member of the RAC, newly appointed this year, and look very much forward to participating. Thank you.
Thank you. And now it's time for public comment on agenda item number 5. Again, if you're representing yourself, you'll have up to 3 minutes. If you're representing an organization, you'll have up to 5 minutes. The first card that we have is Jeff Salt. Either one, I believe. Just push the button to make sure the green light's on.
Good evening, members of the Regional Advisory Council. My name is Jeff Salt. I'm representing the Utah Anglers Coalition. And we have a letter in support of the proposed changes to the fishing guidebook and Rule 657-13. The Utah Anglers Coalition, if you're not familiar with us, we've been around for nearly 20 years, and we've just incorporated this about a month ago after all that time. We are a coalition of various angling organizations, retailers, guides, and other angling industry representatives. And we meet 10 times a year, and in every meeting we meet with the division and we get updates, and so we're really on the pulse of what's going on with angling throughout the state of Utah. We are here to speak in support of the proposed changes for spearfishing. We currently don't have any spearfishing in our group. We'd like to invite them to our group, and we'd like to support their activity. And in particular, we're in support of increased spearfishing opportunities in waters and for species where there is no limit and or where catch and kill regulations are in place. This action will also help to address the problem of illegal species introduction, which is one of our primary goals as an organization. So we encourage this committee to vote in favor of this and pass it on to the wildlife board for favorable consideration. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jeff. The next one on our list is Ken Strong.
Ken Strong, representing Sportsman for Fish and Wildlife. And I have worked in the fishing in the state of Utah for approximately 13 years. And this program that the division has come up with, these advisories and so forth, is a great program that will be beneficial to fishermen, especially those that spearfish. So Sportsman for Fish and Wildlife is in favor of this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. There's no other comment cards, so I'll turn it back to the RAC for discussion. Mike, I can't see if Josh is on. Is he still on? Oh, he's up here. Okay, never mind.
Yep, I'm on, Brock. I can hear you.
I have one more question. As I was sitting here remembering, there was quite a bit of discussion about spearfishing maybe 10 years ago. A lot of it was associated with like Fish Lake and how
getting a lot of non-residents coming in. So what is the current regulation with spearfishing? What's the current status? Are there lakes that they can spearfish, and are there limits different, or how does that work?
Yeah, so you got two parts to your question. The first part is, pertaining to the lakes that they're allowed to spearfish in. Basically, what we've got is statewide, you can spearfish for carp at any water that's open during its open season at that water. Part of our proposal, we're proposing to add Utah chub to that list. So that would, if it's approved, allow both common carp and Utah chub to be spearfished at all open waters during their open season. If you look at other species of fish, what we've got basically in our rule or our fishing guidebook is a list of waters where spearfishing is allowed and the species that are allowed at those individual waters. And the limits are typically the same limits as what's in our guidebook for conventional hook and line anglers.
Thank you.
Bryce.
I would just like to say, I mean, I kind of echoing what Randy was mentioning. It's in my opinion, it's virtually impossible to shoot the wrong fish. I mean, having spearfished a lot in my mostly saltwater, it has been almost impossible to shoot the wrong fish. I pointed out to my sons, one's 12, a parrotfish, and he went crazy. He went ham and was able to as a 12-year-old, first time spearfishing, never shot the wrong fish. And so I think if a child that age and that experience level can do it, I think really any adult could, or anyone of, teenager years, whatever the case may be. And I feel like it's a valuable tool that we could use to get rid of some of these invasives as well. Underwater, especially in freshwater, these fish are not used to seeing a human. And so you can really get close to them. It's kind of surprising. So that's what I would like to say.
Any other discussion?
Josh was trying to talk online, but we weren't hearing. So let's see.
Yes, Josh.
Josh, are you trying to say something?
Nope.
He said, nope.
I can hear loud and clear. It was cutting out earlier, but you've been fine since the break, so you're good.
Excellent.
What's the visibility like in most of the finest waters in Utah that we're discussing?
So obviously there's a lot of that. The time of year would depend. In the spring, it's going to be super cloudy. Deer Creek, for example, I lost a knife and a GoPro, and I was searching for 3 hours in a space that couldn't have been 30 feet. And I found the camera, but not the knife, which was heartbreaking, but I've got more knives. We'll be all right. So I think that's most of the spearfishing waters are relatively clear water for the most part. Fish Lake, Deer Creek, Jordanelle.
Except Utah Lake.
You're good luck in Utah Lake. Very, very, but you can't spearfish, right? From my understanding, or no, just in the river. In the river, correct?
We're proposing both the river and the lake.
Oh, see, and I think that is dynamite. I mean, again, this goes back to the whole idea of possible identification of the June sucker is probably the big concern there in the Provo. And there's no way. I mean, I feel like this is me just going out on a limb, but I think you're far more likely to catch them on rod and reel than you are to shoot them with a spear. There's just no way. Most of the spears that you're going to be using are either a Hawaiian sling, which is a pole spear, or a very small gun, which here to that soda can is, for the record, that's 3 feet. It's very, very limited. And if you can't tell what you're shooting at, you're just not. If you can't tell that's a carp or a June sucker, you're not going to take the shot.
Excellent. Any other discussion? I'd entertain a motion.
I'd move that we accept the recommendation as proposed.
Do I have a second? So we have a motion to accept the recommendation as proposed by Eric and a second by John. All those in favor? Any opposed? I can't see Josh. He raised passes unanimously. Thank you. That moves us on to number 6, the private pond rule amendments. Questions for Randy for the private pond rule amendments from the RAC? Do you have something to add to it too?
Yeah, I have something to add. This isn't really a change in our proposal as much as just an update on something I said in my presentation. So in my presentation, I mentioned that we were in the process of working with the Virgin River Fish Recovery Program to identify some additional species for to be allowed for stocking in the Virgin River drainage. What we've done since we recorded that presentation is we've actually formalized that memorandum of understanding that we've got with the Virgin River program, which really solidifies that list of species. So I just, during the presentation, I teased that there would be 2 to 4 additional species that we're looking at adding, but I know what those species are now. So we're basically proposing to add wiper, black crappie, triplet, grass carp, and tiger trout to the list of species that can be stocked in that Virgin River drainage.
Thank you, Randy. Questions for Randy? Questions from the public? I'll turn the time over to Jason for comments.
Thanks, Brock. We had 2 comments posted for this. One strongly agreed and one was neutral for a weighted average of 4, somewhat agree.
Thank you very much. Now it's time for public comment. We have 3 people with comment cards. Let's start with Robert Judd.
My name is Robert Judd. I'm a producer of fish in the state of Utah. So my comment, I'm not going to try to pick the rule apart one way or the other. My simple comment is, in the past, it's always been brought up to the industry that provides fish to the public water or private waters. Anytime there's been a major change, that we sit down and we try to go through those and see what the problems are and where we can solve those problems. That process has not taken place, and there are very few pond owners and that know anything about this rule change. Whether it's good or bad, I'm not here to debate that part of it. If we're to try to help them comply with the rules, it would be helpful to know what the rules are that are being proposed. And so that's the main thing that I would say is that, we've gone from 12 pages of rule to 30 pages of rule, and just what those changes are and why that's so needed. And that would be my main comment, just those things.
Thank you, Robert.
I have a question for Robert. So in the past, the DWR has contacted the fish producers and gone over the proposed changes to get their input, and they didn't do that this time.
They did not.
Okay.
Yep. So our biggest thing is just how do we comply with the rule if we don't know what the rule is?
Thank you very much. The next comment is by Ken Strong. We'll come back to you, Randy.
Ken Strong, sportsman for Fish and Wildlife. For years and years, as I've worked with the division and seen the things that are going on, in my feelings, the division has constantly tried to make it easier for fish producers to supply the fish. Less paperwork, less things that they have to do. I know that they put the bid out for weight of fish to be bid on by the private producers, and I know most of it comes from Idaho because they can beat everybody's price. But from what I've seen, and the rules and regulations on this right now, I think that it's a great setup that they have. I think that there's a lot of thought that went into it, and I'd support it 100%. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Next comment, Jeff Salt.
Hi, I'm Jeff Salt with Utah Anglers Coalition, and we are here to speak in favor of the proposed rule change. Normally, when there's a rule change, there's kind of a defensive shock reaction from different parties that have a vested interest in whatever that rule covers. As we, as an organization, have read through the rule change, we've found that substantively, there's really not a change to the rule, but there's really more of a reorganization of how the rule is written so that it actually is easier to read and understand. And we think that this is a very logical and a welcome change to the rule. So we support the restructuring of the rule as it's written. We also support current triploid testing protocols that the state currently requires. And we would hope that through this rule change that there wouldn't be any opportunity to, by the growing industry, to try to introduce a less stringent triploid testing protocol. Also, we support the expansion of the list of species that the private growers may raise and stock and put into screened ponds. We think this is an improvement for the industry, and we support that. Furthermore, we support the inclusion of language that clarifies and reinforces the criminal penalty for violations of the rule and the statute. And clearly identifying Class A misdemeanor in the rule is just mirroring what's already written in statute. So there's nothing new, but it just helps put that in so that law enforcement has a stronger tool. And it's already included in state code, so there's really no argument against that. UAC is strongly supportive of the DWR efforts to protect sportfish and native fish populations from escapement of privately stocked fish. Protection of sportfish resources and native species conservation are key priorities for our organization. So we fully support the changes as proposed.
Thank you. I'll turn it back to the RAC for comment or additional questions.
Well, I'll start. I'm not the smartest guy in the world when it comes to this kind of stuff. So, for me to read through the rule and dissect it would be pointless because it's not my area of expertise. But it is concerning to me that the division wouldn't have reached out to the people that this impacts the most. I can imagine the uproar that would occur if the CWMU rule showed up in a packet without contacting CWMUs. And, you can give other examples, but I think I'm not saying it's a good rule or a bad, and I appreciate the gentleman stating that. He's not going to stand there and say no or yes, but there is a concern there, and I would echo that sentiment. I share the same concern. Been involved in this kind of stuff for 25 years, and it's pretty rare that the division doesn't proactively reach out to those that it impacts the most.
So Randy, is there no committee for these rules like they do for generally the wildlife rule changes?
I just want to comment on the process that we followed here for this particular rule change. So for the record, we did have one public open meeting that the private aquaculture industry was invited to discuss this rule and vet this rule change. So they had that opportunity at a Fish Health Policy Board meeting about a month ago. So we provided that opportunity for them. There was no feedback provided at that meeting that made us feel uncomfortable moving forward with this rule. So there was no basically comment either way from the private industry. And the reason that we picked that outlet is that is an outlet, that public meeting that the private industry is heavily involved in. And normally they weigh in on issues during that meeting. So we provided informational at that meeting and an opportunity for them to comment. Another part of this process is we started this rule change really internally, asking ourselves, what would we like to do for this rule from a division perspective that based on our conversations with private pond owners across the state, we think would be a benefit to those owners. We came up with a list of changes, and honestly, the changes we came up with were a net benefit for the industry and private pond owners. So what we felt like is that we didn't need to heavily involve the industry when we knew based on conversations with private pond owners and the public that we felt like we were in a position that everything we're offering was basically an expansion of opportunities and a benefit for them. So we developed the process through that and the rule change, then they had that opportunity to comment at that previous public meeting that was held.
Thank you. I agree with Mike. I still have concerns that the people that were being affected were not involved in the process, more heavily involved in the process. But any other discussion? Oh, I'd entertain a motion then.
I move that we accept the proposal as presented by the DWR.
I'll second.
So we have a motion on the table to accept as presented. Any discussion on the motion?
Yeah, I just want to say I'll probably vote in favor of it because, like I said, I'm not, I read through it. I understood things, but I didn't go through and dissect it and compare. I just want to state for the record one more time that I don't think the division did anything like on purpose or nefarious or anything like that. But I would just reiterate that there should be the partners at the table during the writing of that. So.
Oh. Any other discussion? Then I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? And that passes unanimously. I believe that's the end of our agenda. The other two items are regional and not our region. And so any other comments from the RAC?
Do have one comment on that. I think it's, so like if our region, if we were talking about Deer Creek, I don't think people from the southern region would really care. But I think when we talk about Flaming Gorge or Lake Powell or Bear Lake or some of those water bodies that attract, they're a destination water body. I'm wondering if that wouldn't be good to give that presentation in every RAC, especially here in the northern and central region. I'll bet more people from the Wasatch Front fish Flaming Gorge than they do in Roosevelt. What's that?
And Lake Powell.
And Lake Powell. Yeah. So that was just a comment.
I actually like that. Oh, we have some information on mountain goats before we adjourn this meeting.
So partial information. So I have information on the Wasatch unit. They counted 182. I don't have a breakdown of numbers, demographics or anything like that. And I asked her if that's up or down from the Wasatch, slightly up from the last count she can find in 2017 of 170. So it's, yeah, we're up. So
excellent. Anything else from the RAC?
Hey, Brock.
Go
Brock,
ahead,
this is
Josh.
I really liked Mike's last comment about, specifically Flaming Gorge, Strawberry, Lake Powell. Those are important bodies of water for the entire state and the entire Intermountain West region. And so I agree. I think that's an important conversation to have. It's a little, pond or reservoir, in the southeast. We probably don't need to hear everything, but those are keystone bodies of water. So I echo the sentiment.
So we have two board members here that are hearing this, but I'd be happy to state this recommendation at the next board meeting as well, if this RAC thought that was something everybody agreed upon. I see everybody nodding, so I'll do that. Anything else? Oh, Gary.
Can't you make a motion?
So we probably could. Do you want to make a motion?
Talk too much at these anyway, but I don't know how to phrase it, but it would be something along the lines of, I move that the division present
proposals on destination bodies of water?
Yes, in all RACs. Yeah.
So we have a motion on the table. The motion is that we recommend that division makes presentations to all the RACs on proposals for destination bodies of water. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
A second from Bryce. Any discussion on the motion?
One question I got is, how would you determine what a destination water body is?
That's above my pay grade. But that is that.
But we could throw out suggestions. For example, Bear Lake,
Yeah.
Flaming Gorge, Lake Powell,
Strawberry.
Strawberry.
Utah
Well, we can leave Utah Lake off. We don't want to direct anywhere.
Are there fish in Utah Lake? Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed?
Josh votes yes, his battery just died.
Excellent.
He agrees with Mike's motion.
Passes unanimously. Anything else? Then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. I think we can possibly just say we've adjourned.
Yeah.
We adjourn.